Welcome back. This session is called If You Need a Beach, You Bring the Beach to the Studio. And basically, that's all you need to know. But if you want to know a little bit more about what virtual production is before we dive into the conversation, I have prepared a little introduction. Virtual production, VP sometimes called, is an umbrella term for a type of filmmaking that these days uses 3D modeling inside game engine tools. You make a three-dimensional digital representation of an environment. You can construct it from scratch, or you can record some real place in 3D and put it inside this computer program. And what the game engine allows you to do is that it can render these images in real time. So for instance, when you play computer games, the game engine generates what you are actually looking at on the screen. And because it can be generated in real time, it can also be recorded in real time. And this is at the heart of virtual production in film. This virtual environment replaces a location or a set, or sometimes it complements a location or a set. And you can interact with this virtual environment in many ways, but broadly there are three categories. If it's completely virtual, essentially a kind of animated world, I'm using the terms very imprecisely, you can put a simulated virtual camera inside it still. And you can actually connect it to an iPad and walk around, and your DP can shoot handheld, for instance, inside this virtual world in any room, which is crazy, but very cool. Then there is what we would call avatar style VP, which is maybe you have a shoot against a green screen, but instead of waiting for months, to see the VFX, it's generated in real time, and you can look at it as you're working. Or the most famous kind, maybe today we would call it Mandalorian style, because Disney is using it for the Mandalorian, where you project this virtual environment onto physical LED screens that are the walls of your studio, LED volume, this is called. And then you capture that, you shoot with a normal camera in real time with the actors and props and so on in front of it. And this tricks the eye, making the virtual location physically present. This is going to be everywhere in 3 years, 5 years' time. It's crazy. With me on stage is an early enthusiast, Kjartan Thor Thoradson, CEO of Sagafilm. What should I have added to my explanation of what VP is?
Well, you pretty much got it right there in explaining what it is in lame terms. Maybe we can add that these kind of techniques are being used in animation today, and using that in animation is basically making you spend probably 1/10 of what you're used to spending. So again, also on pre-visualization on projects. So basically it's kind of like coming out of those kind of two areas where you are now adding the full production capabilities in this virtual world.
It's crazy in a way, because anything that you need to prepare visually, it's possible to visit also like in this virtual way. So you can, for instance, do a site visit. Everybody, you make some drawings of a set, and then everybody on the team can go and just walk around inside the drawing. So you can start thinking about blocking, inside a CAD sketch, essentially.
Yes, absolutely, and this is where the technology kind of like was first adapted in our industry, is where you needed to pre-visualize what you were doing, but the technology has basically developed into a full production capability technology, and the engines that were originally created for gaming are now being used for filming, like Unreal Engine and other engines that are being adapted into this technology. But I would say the Unreal Engine is the furthest along.
Yeah, Unity would be like, I guess, the second most well-known, but it's not as much used on the film side.
Unity certainly is the one that has been used for the animation part. It's a little bit less in the real kind of like environments like the Unreal Engine is doing, and I think we can thank Disney and The Mandalorian for a lot of new tools into these engines, that are being added to allow us filmmakers to use these tools.
Everybody expected all of this to happen anyway within the next maybe 5 years, because when a pixel is a pixel, when you're shooting digitally, the images are inside a computer anyway. But of course, the pandemic has accelerated it because remote work became so important and visiting locations is so difficult. So if you can bring the location to you by sending out a very small team of 1, 2, 3 people to capture it and then put that beach inside the studio, of course, it changes it.
Yeah, definitely the need for this technology has grown because of the pandemic. And also the need of shooting in a studio. This kind of like solves a lot of problems that you can solve in a studio now rather than going on location. You know, a lot of filmmakers come to Iceland to shoot glaciers because they're accessible. But now we can also bring the glaciers into the studio. So pre-prep everything and shoot the glacier scenes in studio rather than on location with, you know, much more expense than doing it in a studio.
That sounds dangerous. You still want them to come to Iceland. So what is if you're thinking about it from the perspective, for instance, of Sagafilm, what do you see? What potential do you see with VP on the sort of for your productions, and what potential do you see for your sort of production services menu?
Well, I think people will always want to come and shoot. You know, you need to shoot those plates and those elements that you need into the scenes. But we also, we happen to help a company called Quixel to shoot a lot of the Icelandic scenario, which is now available inside the Unreal Engine. But it's always an added value coming as well. And what we want to do in Iceland also, is bring them into the studios that are being built in Iceland to actually accommodate for this technology.
Now, this is very interesting because this technology is not, especially the studio type volumes, are not easily available. They're still very expensive. If you want to start at this, you know, this completely virtual work, you can go on YouTube and learn about it in like 4 hours of research. You will know enough to start to play around with this technology. So it's a very low threshold at the start and a very high threshold at the most complex end. Now, I'd like to take in now our 2 more guests, Patrick Nebout and Henrik Jansson-Schweizer, executive producers at Dramacorp, and are joining us, I think, from Stockholm and France. Here you are. Hello. Am I right about your locations?
Hello. Hello, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. You have a project called Whiskey on the Rocks. Now, this name is a pun. Whiskey is, of course, a type of submarine, and this is a famous Cold War story from Sweden. Can you tell us super briefly what the project is?
Shall I start, Patrick?
Sure.
It's Whiskey on the Rocks is a special event series that's inspired by a really notorious incident that took place in Sweden back in 1981. So it's kind of a period piece we're looking into here. It was a Russian submarine, a whiskey model that ran aground on rocks deep inside Swedish territorial waters. And that led to a really notorious Cold War standoff incident between Sweden and Soviet that took, I think it was 11 days to kind of resolve. And this is a project we have been looking at for some years now, but we decided here a few months ago that we should actually do this as a dramedy, more like the Death of Stalin. Mm-hmm. So the story for this project is written by Jonas Jonasson, who wrote the novel of the 100-Year-Old Man. So it's a very funny story coming up here.
It has a lot of very absurd diplomatic and bureaucratic and historical elements, but of course when it comes to the actual historical environment, this is also a serious project. So what is the thinking that made you think about VP virtual production techniques and pipelines for this project?
Yeah, I just want to say that the story takes place in Moscow, in Stockholm, and in Brussels. So it's like 3 locations that we want to create in this virtual way of producing. So that's why we're looking on this, and of course inside the submarine as well. But that's why we're looking into this technology. We think this project is really a good fit with doing it, producing it this way.
Of course, and also real submarines are very, very small. So using a real submarine is not the thing. You'd have to build it regardless. So then I guess I read about this project in Variety, and it looked from that you are considering a combination of using in-camera work on LED walls, so Mandalorian style, and also green screen work, so Avatar style. Do you already know where you will be shooting, Patrick?
Yeah, I mean, I think we are. I mean, it's an early development, and we are, as Kjartan also said, the technology is quite new to Europe now. It's popping up here and there, and I think what the biggest challenge for this project is that we would try to want to have a one-stop shop, and I think that's, in the US ILM. I mean, the stagecraft, the concept that has been developed by LM, Unreal, and Epic is, of course, an option, but it's a very expensive option. And for the moment, that's something that mostly the US and really, really big productions such as Star Wars and Mandalorian can afford. So we want to find a way, which I think is very kind of European and Nordic thinking of combining the best of the different words. And
Kjartan is nodding. I have to say, sorry, I just have to agree. Are you thinking that you may need to call these guys after we get off the air?
Well, I think
we know each other.
Yeah,
right? we have met a couple of times. I think I
we have
recognize you from somewhere.
conversations about Iceland.
I think there's a reason we're all on this panel.
Yeah.
We've been discussing developing projects together for this medium, and Patrick happens to be in the same group as Sagafilm.
Yeah.
At the Nordic studio, so we know each other very well.
Yeah, but regardless of that, so I mean, as Kjartan said, there are a few things popping up here and there, and so we're looking at different ways. I mean, right now, I think we can agree also with Kjartan the fact that there is no integrated solution in Europe. What we have discovered, because we've been doing some exploration and research for the last few weeks, is I think that strangely enough, I don't know if you can say that, but France is one of the countries that have come the furthest in this kind of technology. At the moment, there are two companies in Paris that have been using the Mandalorian VP production technology, mostly for commercials and music videos, but that have started now working for TV series and even feature-length movies. And that's an option, of course. And I think that it all comes down to where is it the most efficient to shoot. And I think that also from a Nordic and Swedish perspective, we can see that we are looking at, I mean, unfortunately, Sweden still doesn't have any tax incentive. And I think that's why, unfortunately, a lot of productions are still Swedish productions are being shot elsewhere, as in Iceland, Eastern Europe.
Yeah, and in Estonia, of course, who are also building, we should say, LED studios right now.
Absolutely.
So this is, but I mean, if there's also a tendency to bring more Swedish productions home for all kinds of reasons, including the instability of the next few years. So I also think it feels like this would be a great time to invest in these technologies. Certainly, if you're in regional business development, but also I think perhaps even if you're a private company, this is a time to expand, because there's going to be an enormous market. What would be your advice? Like, what do we need? What does the industry need to do? What kind of investment do you need?
Well, I think it's twofold. You need the studios, which is traditional studios, but with the LED screens and the 3D tracking technology to allow us to come. Then we need the creative capabilities. That's the second part. And today, we are kind of like sourcing that in gaming companies, people that are used to making games. But that's a very competitive industry. It's very hard to get these people to move to start working for the film industry. So I think we need to invest in creative.
Yeah, a normal creative technologist gets paid the same as a film producer, and it becomes a very expensive,
while
pipeline,
gaming is a very highly paid. So it's we need to invest in actually growing the talent base of working in this medium and working with the Unreal engines and the 3D environments.
Part of that, of course, is that you can start learning You can start learning by, anybody who is interested in this can start learning today.
Absolutely.
Because the skills are transferable. The things that you're learning in the fully virtual world, you can then bring to the studio. Many aspects of it, certainly.
Yes, well, what we're doing is we're combining the two worlds. DOPs, directors, writers, these people are adapting to this technology quite fast because, we're not really changing how we're making films. But what we need is the talent behind that creates the digital assets. And that's where I kind of like have found the biggest difficulty in finding the talent that has done this before.
Yeah.
They've done it for games, but we need photorealistic work as well. So,
which goes to show that, again, the projects like Whiskey on the Rock will be so important also as a sort of breeding ground or testing ground for this talent. So if you get a project like yours, you will find the teams and you will be able to develop these skills. What about you, Henrik? What would you say? What's your wish for action from everybody else?
Yeah, I would like to say that you also have to rethink the development process when you're working with this technology. I mean, before it was always like fix it in post, but now you have to kind of fix it in pre-production. So you have to kind of switch everything and do it a different way. So you have to find new ways of develop projects with this technique that doesn't look like before.
But I think also it's important to remember that it's not this technique and technology is not the holy grail. I mean, it doesn't apply to all projects, and I think that what we have with Whiskey on the Rocks is that you have a project that is very suited for that because our idea basically is to shoot the whole production in one studio, which means that you would just switch at the click of a button. You just click and you get a new set. While you're in the White House, you're in the Kremlin, you're in the Swedish State Department, you're in NATO in Brussels, and you can be also in the exteriors outside of the submarine. And that suits well for these kind of productions, but it doesn't suit for like huge battlegrounds and stuff like that. I mean, that's something still that just the Americans or like really huge production can afford. And I think that's where we have to find our way in Europe. And I think that the different solutions that are being developed now in Iceland, France, and elsewhere are really exciting and interesting.
Thank you so much for joining us, Patrick and Henrik. I guess you will get the last words. Or let's both do. Let's say what we find most exciting about this. My most exciting thing is what I've learned from people who are working with this in the United States is that department heads can collaborate better. So set designers and costume designers. A lot of people felt that they have lost control over their contribution in post-production. But now everybody can work together in pre. And it can become more artistically coherent. And I think that's very exciting. What's your big excitement?
Yeah, well, artistically, you open up a completely new spectrum of what you can do and what kind of stories you can tell. And that's the important thing, I guess, because it makes television different. It takes it to a different level. It's hard to compare it to The Mandalorian. I always talk about The Mandalorian because it's such a big, crazy production. But it shows what kind of things you can do with this technology. And we here in Europe, we are definitely adapting in a different way, in a smaller way. But it allows us to create different kind of ideas, new ideas that we couldn't do before because building huge sets is not a problem anymore. We can do it in the virtual
and any
world.
kind of set as well, because I think I like The Mandalorian very much, but if I want to see a space western, I would much rather see an Icelandic space western than a US space western. Yeah. Thank you so much, Kjartan, Patrick and Henrik, for joining us for this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.